So the module we're doing today is business ethics, and we looked at the learning outcomes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And today I'm just going to give you a summary before this session is the assignment discussion session. So I'll give you a quick summary. So firstly, we'll go through what learning outcome 1 was, which was to understand different ethical perspectives in a business. We looked at what business ethics is within a business, what ethics is and why it's so important with any organization and a business. We also looked at the importance of the background and development of theoretical ethical approaches. We looked at types of business ethics, which was moral objectivism. We looked at moral relativism. We looked at consequentialism, and we looked at deontology. We then went on to look at principalism, and we identified why they were so important within a business. Then we looked at the concept of absolute and relative ethics and why that's important within a business and society. We then went up to look at absolute ethics. We went to look at relative ethics and the importance of that. Then we identified in 1.2 to compare and contrast absolute and relative ethics. We then went on to look at ethical issues which may affect the operational activities of a business. And we looked at things like, employment law, equal opportunity, employment regulations, and diversity. So we looked at employment law in the fact that, employment laws are obeyed and that we have a contract of employment which we must follow. Equal opportunities, like we don't discriminate against anyone based on their sex, age, or gender. Employment regulations, we looked at them, how people are treated fairly or not. And then we looked at the diversity one, that we should not discriminate against anyone on the basis of their diversity. So we then went on to learning outcome 2, which is the next one. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, thank you. So we then went on to learning outcome 2, which was looking at understanding business objectives from an ethical perspective. And we looked at what is a code of ethics and why it's so important to have a code of ethics within any sort of business, and what it does, what the point of having a code of ethics is, that it serves to guide you, to support you on a day-to-day basis. Why have a code of ethics? We looked at a code of ethics can help an organization. We looked at how a code of ethics will help any organization. We looked at what should a code of ethics include, and how there are different code of ethics for different organizations. So things like it should include a reference, legal responsibility, governing behavior, confidentiality, health and safety, equality, discrimination, etc. We looked at how you'd put the code of ethics together and implementing the code of ethics within a business or an organization. And we looked at an example which was to do with Kraft and their code of ethics and 10 rules that they applied. We then went on to look at 2.1, which was looking at explaining how business objectives are affected by ethical considerations. We then went to understanding the business environment, the primary, secondary, and the tertiary. We looked at the 3 sectors which most businesses fall into, which are private sector, public sector, and voluntary sector. We then went on to describe each of these sectors and why they're so important. We then went to look at understanding competition for private businesses, public sector, and voluntary sector. And we looked at the importance of mission and vision statements within these organizations. We then went on to look at aims and objectives and understanding the terminology, and also the organizational responsibilities within a business. We then looked at 2.2, which was to evaluate the implications for a business and its stakeholders to operate ethically. We looked at the importance of stakeholders, why there's a need to have stakeholders, and the different 3 types of stakeholders: internal stakeholders, connected stakeholders, and external stakeholders. We looked at the conflict of stakeholders We also looked at stakeholders as customers, and we also looked at the importance of stakeholders within the government organisation. So that was learning outcome 1 and 2, which we identified. Then the next one to look at is learning outcome 3. Okay. And this was looking at, can you see that learning outcome 3?
Yes.
This was looking at understanding the ethics within a workplace relationship. So why businesses need ethics within a workplace, why business ethics are so important. We looked at the relevance of ethics to a business, why it's so important to have it, and why, you know, why it's good for the company's reputation. We looked at business ethics and what it's about, morality, and about the individual's rights. We looked at the benefits and drawbacks of ethical behaviour. We then went to look at business ethics, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability within a business. We also looked at the UK Modern Slavery Bill and what businesses must do in regards to following that, and the ethical trading initiatives. We looked at the definition of slavery and what it was in regards to child labour, gender, below living wage, these kind of things we identified. We also identified some examples. So Apple factories accused of exploiting Chinese workers. So these were some examples that we gave. Understanding the business environment. We looked at the types of business include things like sole traders, partnership, limited companies. We then looked at the business sectors, private, public, voluntary, their main responsibility. And then we went on to understanding competition again. Stakeholders we looked at, and the conflicts between stakeholders and organisations, and policies to complement a code of ethic and allied legislation. So we looked at the policies in regards to what organisations will use. We also looked at legislation and ethics and the accountability of an organisation if they don't follow the regulations and legislations in place. We looked at business law, commercial law. We also looked at the legislation and organisational accountability. So, you know, for example, if a company sold a defective product, what would be the issue around it? We looked at how it's difficult sometimes to prove things through a court of law. We identified, you know, the legality of business ethics, and we looked at business ethics and the law. There was a video there that looked at the ethical issues. We looked at the different scandals. There was a scandal in 2000 which looked at the issue around ethics, and these were some links to to the legislation, things like trading standards, health and safety executive, equal human rights, equality human rights, what are human rights, and legislation. We looked at consumer protection, and there was a link there to acsa.org. We also looked at corporate governance and what it includes, things like employment and industrial law, corporate law and finance, etc. We also looked at the global coverage, and we also looked at legislation and organisational accountability in regards to international trade, competition law, internet law, foreign investment. We also looked at the concept of ethics in organisational structure. There was further reading on that one to look at in regards to theory and practice on ethics. 3.1, we looked at assess the role of a company acting as a moral agent, so annual general reports. We looked at 3.2, which was analyse the development of mechanism for achieving employee involvement and empowerment. And these were some of the reference that we used in learning outcome 3. We then went on to look at the final learning outcome, which was learning outcome 4. Can you see that, Placidia?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So this was the learning outcome 4, the final one, which was to be able to assess a current ethical issue in a business. So we looked at, again, what the importance of ethics is in a relationship with consumers and businesses and between an individual. So we looked at the approach to ethics, deontological I can say that, teleological, 2 theories, consistency, human dignity, university, econism and utilitarianism. We looked at examples of ethical issues within a business. So we looked at discrimination in the workplace, and we looked at the Equality Act and the importance of the Equality Act 2010 within a business on how you would treat someone fairly on the basis of their age. You should not be discriminating. We looked at unsafe working conditions, and we looked at health and safety at work 1974, and how employers should be protected, and the employers have a duty to protect the employee from health and safety issues. We also looked at whistleblowing or social media rants, so how business owners must respect, not penalize employees who are deemed whistleblowers, and either regulatory authorities on social media. We then went on to look at accountancy practices and bookkeeping, and we looked at an example was Eron in 2001. And then we looked at non-disclosure and corporate espionage, where employers are at risk of employees and former employees stealing information from the business. We then went on to 4.1, which was to research a current ethical issue affecting a selected business. And the selected business we chose was Shell, and we looked at their situation in regards to their business ethics. We looked at how human rights were violated within Shell, and we looked at how the company is facing problems within the organization. We also looked at 4.2, which was to report on how the business could improve their ethics and operations whilst meeting objectives and ensuring good employer-employee relations. And we referred to Shell for that as well. How they need to clean up the process and, provide clean drinking water. We looked at designing a suitable ethical code, and the importance of designing a good ethical code. And we again looked at the example of Shell, and how its employees should be considered by the company and looking after the employees. We also looked at the issues around corruption, and that was in regards to Shell as well. And these are some of the references we used in regards to. So we've kind of done learning outcome, quickly done learning outcome 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to go on to the assignment discussion session, which is primarily the session that most people want to get on with when they've done the learning outcomes. So can you see this?
Yes, please.
It says assignment discussion. Okay, so if you've got any questions or anything, Placidia, please ask me, okay? And I'll ask you if you need to ask me anything, okay? So this is the assignment discussion. So useful tips here. Read the task carefully. Focus on details. Command words, so broadly use as guidance. I suggest for action command words, you can cover the task by writing them. So explain, define, describe is 70 to 100 words. Assess, examine, clarify, analyze is 100 to 125 words. And compare, contrast, critically evaluate is 150 to 200 words. Now, the Harvard, do you know what the Harvard referencing system is?
Yes.
Yes. So that why do you think it's so important to reference your work properly?
So that you can they can see where you got the information from, so that you're not like copy and pasting off the internet or something.
And why do you think that's so important? Is it to do with things like plagiarism and things like that?
Yes, plagiarism. Yeah.
And it's so important that you reference your work properly using the Harvard system of referencing. So the author and the date style, for example, Slack, Johnston, Brandon, Jones, 2011 in your text. And in the reference towards the end, it will come as shown. And the word limit. So it's so important to identify these. So the assessments. Theory for explain, define, describe 70 to 100 words. Application for assess, examine, clarify, analyze 100 to 125 words. Example for compare, contrast, critically evaluate 150 to 200 words. And assessment is different types. So there's 16 types. You got PD, presentations, reporting, observe at work, group discussion, activity, writing, report, or assignment. So the assignment presentation. document structure and formatting. It is good practice to put the unit number and the name. So when you're doing a unit, any unit you're doing, you need to put the unit number and the name. You need to start with a bit of an introduction to the unit, maybe module 30 to 50 introduction words. Write out the learning outcome if you are mentioning it. Otherwise, it's not required. The font size should be 12. It should be line spacing, 1.5, and page numbers to be inserted. Table of contents to be drawn, and conclusion 20 to 30 words, and then a reference and bibliography. So the scenario for this assignment is, you are interested in ethics and it is an effect on individual organizations and the world of business. You have decided that you wish to spend a period of time furthering your studies in this area. There are a number of universities in the United States which offer bursaries for students enrolling on business ethics programs. And you have decided to apply. One course in particular interests you because it combines theory with real business practice, and the aim of program of study is to be consider the relevance of ethics to a business objectives and responsibilities. So that's the scenario. Activity 1, you plan to complete the application form from the university, and in addition, you need to produce a paper for the admission tutor on ethical perspectives in the business. Okay? Do you understand that, yeah? Activity 1, your paper must include explain the background and development of theoretical ethical approaches. That's one part, okay? So you must have this as a heading. Do you understand? So explain the background and development of ethical approaches, and then, put it as a heading. Then the second bit is to compare and contrast absolute and relative ethics. And then the third one is to explain the ethical issues which can affect the operational activities of a business. Now, these are in these slides that we've just gone through, okay? So that's activity 1. Activity 2. Following receipt of your application and paper, the admissions tutors contacted you expressing interest in taking your application further. As this is applied course, she has now asked you to write further materials in the form of an article for a business magazine. The article must be divided into sections covering. So these are 4 sections in activity 2. Firstly, you need to look at explanation of how business activities are affected by ethical issues. Secondly, you need to look at evaluation of the implications for a business and its stakeholders to operate ethically. Thirdly, you need to look at assessment of the role of the company acting as a moral agent. And fourthly, in activity 2, you need to look at analyze of the development of mechanism for achieving employee involvement and empowerment. You need to have each one as a heading and then write under each one, okay? So it's clear for the person doing the work, marking the work. Then you've got activity 3. Here, your work has impressed the admission tutor. 2 members of the faculty now wish to interview you on Skype. The topic for the interview will be your assessment of a current ethical issue in a business of your choice. In preparation for this interview, you should research a current ethical issue affecting your selected business. So it could be any business that you've chosen. That example we used was Shell. You can choose any business, okay? Report on how this business could improve the ethics of their operations whilst meeting their objectives and ensuring good employer-employee relationships. Design a suitable ethical code. Okay? So these are the things so there's 3 activities. I'll just go back to the other part of it. There's 3 activities, and within the 3 activities, there's pointers that you need to address. Okay? Let me just open this up. So here is, can you see the assignment there? So task 1, you need to plan and complete the form, explain the background development of theoretical approaches, compare and contrast absolute and relative, and explain the ethical issues which can affect the operational activities. Task 2.
Oh, sorry, am I going to create an application form or something?
No. You just need to do it as a paper, as a plan, as a paper.
Okay.
Just as it says, you plan to complete the application from the university.
Okay.
In addition, to produce a paper. So it's
Okay.
just,
Okay. Okay.
an assignment, okay?
Okay.
So you need to explain the background and the development, compare and contrast absolute and relative ethics, and explain the ethical issues. Task 2, you need to be looking at explaining how business objectives are affected by ethical considerations, evaluation of the implications for a business and its stakeholders to operate ethically, and assessment. So make sure that when you're doing each one, you put task 2, and then each one that you're talking about, you use as a heading. Do you understand? So there's
Yes.
4 bits of it there. So you need to write under each heading what it is.
Okay.
Okay. Task 3, you need to research current ethical business issues and report on how the business is improving, and design an ethical code. These are some guidelines that will help you towards task 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, task 2, 2.1, 2.2, 3.1, and 3.2, and task 3, 4.1, and 4.2, and 4.3. Okay, these will help you to identify what you need to put in each one. Okay, make sure you're using the Harvard referencing system. Make sure that you are doing the font size right. Make sure you are sticking to the word limit. Make sure you are referencing your work, because it's so important that you reference your work. Make sure at the start that you put your name, your college ID number, and your module. So this is 5.8 business ethics. And you need to put in what the credits are and your name. So it identifies that when you're marking, we're able to identify whose work it is. Also, a contents page, so that you've covered each one. So try to do task 1 first, cover all task 1, then go on to task 2. Okay?
Yes.
So
Yes.
do it in order. So complete task 1. You can put at the top of it task 1, and then you could put the 3 points, and under the 3 points write about each one.
Okay.
So you would put one heading as explain the background development of theoretical ethical approaches, and then write about that, and with references, with it being line spaces, and make sure that you are doing your work ethically, and not literally, if you are taking a quote or something out, make sure you are referencing properly using the Harvard system. So the author and then the year in the in-text. So a lot of this will be in learning outcome 1, learning outcome 2, learning outcome 3, and learning outcome 4 to complete this. When you do task 2, make sure you highlight is task 2, and within task 2, you've got 4 tasks there to do. Then task 3, within them, do 3 tasks. Okay, so have you got any questions around the things that we've just discussed today?
No, it's fine. But if I do have questions, so how do I?
I
Should I
think
just ask them?
you need to either email myself or email LearnerWorks.
Okay.
But a lot of it will be all in. It's mainly LearnerWorks at UK Varsity, in regards to any sort of questions around that. But a lot of it will be the fact that you're able to look at the slides and try to answer the questions in regards to the slides.
Okay.
And the learning outcomes are covering all the elements that are in these tasks. So,
Okay.
you just go back to learning outcome 1, 2, 3, and 4 on Moodle, and there'll be some additional reading on Moodle as well that you can do to help you support you with this assignment.
Okay.
Now the module has finished, you have 2 weeks to kind of prepare the module.
Okay.
You've got 2 weeks to prepare the module, and make sure that if you have any questions, make sure that you ask them, in regards to any sort of issues around how to complete the task. But I think it's quite clear that you need to make sure that the contents are, that your contents page is clear. Your tasks, how you do them, task 1 with all them elements in, task 2 with all the elements in, and task 3 with all the elements. It's very I think it's a good way to do it if you complete one task rather than going through doing a little bit of task 1 and then a little bit of task 2.
Yeah.
It's better
I
to
think it's
complete one
easier
task,
to
and it's
finish, to just
easier for you to
get
understand
it
as
done.
well.
Yeah. I think it's easier to
So
just finish it than you're done with one.
yeah, yeah. I think some people, what they do is they do a little bit of task one, then go to task two, and I think it confuses people.
Yeah,
So I
I
think the
get
best way
confused
to
if I do
yeah,
things like
yeah, I would get confused as well. I think the best way for you to do it is complete each task, itself slowly, like task one, and also like when it was saying here at the back, the top bits about a little bit about the document structure. Make sure you've got a small introduction to the area, and then write down the learning outcome if you are mentioning it, but in this case you are doing the tasks, so just mention them. Your font size is 12, line spacing, and then insert your pages. These are important things that need to be taken into consideration when you're doing the assignment, any assignment. With UK Varsity, you need to look at the introduction, the structure. It needs to flow. The document needs to have a clear structure, so it's not everywhere. So when you're doing task one, stick to task one, complete task one, then go on to task two. Table of contents is important as well, and make sure you have the unit name and your college, your name and your college, your ID number. Also,
yeah.
even having a conclusion at the end helps as well, and referencing and bibliography. So what resources you've used. It's important that, throughout you're referencing using the Harvard system in your text, but also you need to identify what resources you've used, what internet sites you've used, when you access these internet sites, and make sure you are using the Harvard system for referencing as well. Have you got any questions on the assignment presentation or the structure?
No, it's fine. I understand.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, and the other thing is, when we looked at the useful tips, focus on what the question is asking you. Okay, don't be, moving away from the question. Answer the question as it is, because I'll just give you an example. For example, in task one, in activity one, it says, compare and contrast absolute and relative ethics. That's all you're going to be looking at in that. You're not going to look at ethical approaches or ethics within a business. It's only asking you to compare the difference between absolute and relative ethics. Okay, so that's what you need
Okay.
to do, and make sure your answers are answering the question, and they're detailed as well. Not a huge amount of detail, but make sure you've answered what the question is asking you.
Yeah. Thanks for telling me that,
Okay.
because when you write and you tend to forget, you
Yeah,
just want to continue.
yeah, you do, you're right, totally right. You when you start writing, I have students on the degree that I teach, and when they start writing, it says it's a 3,000 word essay, and they go to 4,000, and then you get
Mm,
penalized for going over the word count as well. So
okay.
you need to answer the question as it is,
Like keep
because that's
focused.
the most important thing. I
Yeah.
think what we do, we tend to get a bit excited and go over and aboard,
Like I'm
and
getting it,
and
I'm getting it. Yeah, that happens to me a lot.
yeah,
Sometimes I
yeah,
just forget
I
to
do
book the
that. I do
content. I
that
just keep
myself, and
writing.
I tend to write too much. And then
Mm,
when it comes to the time to cut it down, it's difficult, because then you
mm,
think everything's important.
yeah.
So, just read the question. It's really important you read the question and answer it. And make sure, like I said, do task one first, then task two, then task three. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Have you got any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this. And it's all recorded, so you can go on and look at the learning outcomes 1, 2, 3, and
Is
4.
it going to be
And then
posted on WhatsApp thing so I can just make reference to it?
I don't know how to do. They'll put it on Moodle for you. I'll tell them now. I'll email Jill to put all
Because it's
this on
always
Moodle.
so easy to just play it on WhatsApp anywhere you are.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll tell them to maybe put all the recordings on WhatsApp,
Mm, yeah.
or if you can email them yourself and tell them.
It's always faster when you tell them to just do it right
Yeah.
away.
No, I will. Don't worry, don't worry. I'll email them now to put all the
Mm,
recordings on WhatsApp for you, okay?
yeah. It's just
Okay.
easier than logging in into
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
module
No,
and
that's okay.
looking for the course topic and stuff. Yeah.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
understandable. I understand what you mean. Yeah. Have you got any other questions or anything?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience and thank you for attending and good luck with your assignment.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a nice
Bye.
day. Bye.